Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So let us revisit. So up to here, I did not teach anything actually, but I sort of dissipated 1 hour. So no questions, I guess. So energy balance equation, let us just revisit, and I am not going to rewrite. So or if you want to be very careful, drawing the line is at times a big problem. So what is, so this everybody understands, right? I have not talked anything. What is U2 and U1? Yeah, this is easy question. Vivek, stay. Certainly not final and initial values. Vivek, final state. Are you perfect with your answer, Vivek? One state and another state. Okay, I will pick up the word state. What does state mean, Shyam and Vivek? The moment you say that the initial state and the final state, you are assuming something. What is that? These are small things we overlook when we are building our concepts. Very good, Sai Vardhan. Equilibrium. No, not process, equilibrium. So whenever the process has taken you from U1 to U2, right? See, please do not confuse one thing. Irrespective of whether you have undergone an ideal process, reversible process, or quasi-equilibrium process, your initial and final states are in equilibrium. Is it clear to all? You can jump from any state to the other state, but when you are writing the final change in energy, right, 1 and 2 are equilibrium states, and this is a major source of confusion I find in a lot of people. And 2 will be in equilibrium. 2 is an equilibrium state irrespective of the path. Why 1 and 2 has to be in equilibrium? Why 1 and 2 has to be in equilibrium? This is very simple. Don't take too much time. Very good. I was sort of expecting the answer will come from you. Until and unless the states are in equilibrium, you cannot write down the state variables, right? You cannot define. Bhavna. State variables are only defined at equilibrium. It is not Vardhan, it's not internal energy. You cannot define a state until and unless it's at equilibrium. Yes, Vivek also. Absolutely correct. So this is fine. But now, so then whatever form of this equation you have studied, let's say in this piston cylinder problem, whatever you have studied in this piston cylinder problem, right? This equation works perfectly. Is it clear? There's no problem. So you have a initial state with pressure and volume as P1 and V1. You have pressure and volume as P2 to V2, right? And then you can find out what is the change in energy. So how do you transform? Okay, let's not talk about it. I will come back to it later when we talk about enthalpy. Can there be any type of system, and just use your imagination a little bit. See, one of you are getting unmuted repeatedly. I don't know who is that. Can there be any system cannot be applied directly? Anything? Any answer? Are there any type of process which cannot be, in which this equation, this form of the equation cannot be directly used? Can anything come to your mind? No nuclear reaction, no, Samira. No, 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 no. Much simpler. Expansion of gas in vacuum, no. Depends on what is the system boundary we're considering. This is certainly much easier than nuclear reaction, and chemical engineers have to do it all the time. No, not electrical work. No. Good guesses, but not exact. Electrical work, this equation perfectly fine. The answer to that is continuous process. And many times these are associated with flow. How? I'll give a very simple example. Many of you have seen hot water, I mean, all of you have seen hot water geysers, right? What happens there? There is a heating coil, right? It's electrically heated, and this is a pipe or tube through which water passes, right? Let's say water enters at 25 degrees centigrade, and water exits at what temperature? Any idea water exits at what temperature? Well, Devesh, good answer. I was trying to coerce the class. Very good. It's 35 to 45, something like that. Typically, the fun is that all of you are sitting from home, and I could not convince you with all the theatrics and dramatics. See, whenever we talk about heating of water, we sort of have a mental tendency. It has to go up all the way up to 100 degrees centigrade. And this is for the first time I could not get that answer out of any one of you, right? When some student is answering, sir, it will be 100 degrees centigrade. And we typically have good fun over that. So whatever is the temperature, right? Can you apply? So if I now tell you to find out the heating rate of this, or the electricity required to heat this coil, or what is the amount of heat that needs to be transferred, even simple. So if I ask you to find out what is Q that needs to be transferred for a given volumetric flow rate, you all know the answer, right? You immediately know, because you know the value of Cp. So it's going to be m dot Cp into delta T, the mass flow rate into Cp into delta T, right? And Cp of water, all of you know. Where is this equation coming from? What is the genesis of this equation? How do you get it? Think very carefully before getting angry that why I am dragging such a simple stuff. Think very carefully. Is this equation, firstly, so this part, let us go a little slowly because this is a major concept building step. Though you think that you know it all, this is actually a very major concept building step. So everybody understands this? No, Snail, answer is wrong, not experimental. Everybody understands this? This everyone agrees? So if I ask you, give you this problem and ask you to find out what is the heat required, blah, 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 this is the way you are going to calculate. Now my question is, please follow it with a little bit of caution and passion. Is this expression coming from here? All that is fine. H equal to U plus PV, M CV minus R delta T, all that is fine. Not CV minus R, CV plus R delta T, all that is fine. But here you essentially are doing an energy balance, right? You had a flowing stream. So that stream was coming with certain amount of internal energy, right? Now you have added some additional heat, Q, and therefore the internal energy of the system has gone up. So it is as if that this stream was entering with internal energy of U1 and this is U2. So U2 is higher than U1. This has increased because you have applied heat and which is manifested as higher temperature. This is what is happening. So this is nothing but an energy balance, right? So are you using this equation straight away? See, there is no work because nothing is moving. No piston is moving or anything like that. So are you applying this equation straight away? Or whatever way you want to frame the question for yourself. This calculation, what you do you get the expression from that equation or this is something completely different? What is the answer? And if it is from that equation, my simple question is, do you satisfy the condition of equilibrium? Yes, please. Just participate, whatever comes to your mind. My questions are as follows. Even I don't know whether I'm able to frame the questions very well or not. So when you say that Q is equal to MCP delta T, are you essentially using the energy balance equation? This is my question number one. And if you are using the energy balance equation, which writes delta U is equal to Q plus W, and delta U is essentially U2 minus U1, and you just few minutes back, the whole class agreed to the fact that U2 and U1 must be at equilibrium because of the fact that without equilibrium, you cannot define the state variables. My question is how you are sort of merging these two concepts. Constant pressure he has taken for granted. Dynamic equilibrium, Devesh, you are very close. Your answer is very close, but not fully. There is no dynamic equilibrium. Dynamic equilibrium is something like a tank in which the water is entering from one end and leaving from one end, and it's sort of the height is constant. There is no dynamic equilibrium here. Your thought is good. Shayan, no, I don't agree to your answer. A constant pressure, of course, because CP you are using. But that's not the crux of the problem. So whoever has loved Shayan's answer doesn't really help. That's not the crux of the problem. That's not the crux of what I try to. Then it is in equilibrium and we can apply energy balance. Yeah, so no. If there is a flow at constant flow rate, it is not at equilibrium, truly speaking. Sneh, your answer is also very close, but not the correct answer. Is the class getting the complexity now of such a simple system? That you have essentially applied the energy balance equation. Depends on the choice of system. Aman, can you please explain what system you are choosing? It's at thermal equilibrium. No, heat is being added. How can there be thermal equilibrium? Aman, choice of system. What do you mean by choice of system? Electric component to the system, do that. But your final initial and final states are the low temperature water and high temperature water. We consider a constant volume of the heater too. Yeah, of course, consider. Heater volume is constant. Of course, heater volume does not change with time. Have you seen your geyser becoming larger with time? Answer is no. Of course, the constant volume. But the liquid is flowing. That is the fundamental difference when you are using a geyser versus when good old days when your mother in winter would take a can full of water and put it in a burner, heat it up, and you will bring it, put it in your bucket and have your bath. That is a system where essentially, though you're heating from the burner, the process might be non-equilibrium, but you essentially transform from essentially first equilibrium state, which was water in North India at 8 degrees centigrade, to let's say water at 32 degrees centigrade, right? But here the situation is different. Here there is a flow. And there, if you sort of consider there, I mean, when you are heating it up in a jar or something, if you consider evaporation to be zero, right, you essentially had a constant volume system also. And therefore, there is a transition from U1 to U2. But what about this case? We are calculating the heat required here. Yes, of course, we are calculating the heat required here. And it's heat per unit time. 15 minutes, the total heat requirement will be different than if you run your geyser for 30 minutes. But what will be constant? The heat required per unit time is going to be constant in both the cases. And that's the clue I have given. So what you need to do for a flowing system, see, this is one concept. It is not taught in classical thermodynamics. And this is an engineering concept. It's not a science concept, right? So this is essentially looking at the energy balance equation for a flowing system. We are all convinced about what can be a very nice practical example of a flowing system, that we are all clear now. It's an energy balance equation for a flowing system, which is also known as the rate form of the yes, now you are talking sense name. But what is the problem in doing that in per unit time? Rate form of the energy balance equation. And also remember one golden word in science: whenever there is problem, we come up with flurry of assumptions. That is very important to understand why these assumptions are there. Like we often tend to take these assumptions very lightly. Like now the whole class understands that when in a simple thermodynamics pressure volume work type problem, why in every problem statement the word frictionless cylinder is mentioned, right? Nobody ever cared. "theek hai, likha hai." People have to fill up pages, so they have written some stuff. It's not that. Because of that statement, you are able to use this equation in toto, and you can say dissipation is neglected, right? So we need to understand about the rate form. So what is it? Uh, so essentially rate form means it is per unit time. So if we write the equation in the classical form, let's have everything to start with. This plus minus I never bothered too much. So sometimes it is desirable to use the first law as a rate equation. So what we are going to do, the first law as a rate equation. That expresses, this is the classical writing from some book I have copied, I don't know. the instantaneous, you don't have to mug it, instantaneous or the average rate at which energy crosses the control surface. As heat, work, or flow. So how many understand the word control surface? Control surface is nothing but the surface of the control volume. So I guess, is there anyone in the class who doesn't understand the terminology control volume? So control volume is typically a hypothetical domain in space, right, over which we perform a balance. So in typical classical fluid mechanics, what you do the balance of conservation of mass and conservation of momentum over the control volume, right? But when you are talking about, because of the fact that classical fluid dynamics, of course, you consider the system to be isothermal, right? But when you consider heat transfer or the thermodynamic issues, you need to calculate. So, or when you are looking at the energy balance equation for a flowing system, you need to worry about the energy entering and energy leaving the control volume. And from where does energy enter or energy leave the control volume? It leaves essentially through the surfaces. Also, for a flowing system, okay, let's not get into all that complexities. So in order to do that, what you do is so the point is, in defining, so we are drifting from a strictly classical viewpoint of thermodynamics. As classical thermodynamics, this is an important statement. As classical thermodynamics deals with system that are at equilibrium and so time independent. I'm sorry for writing some apparently mugged up stuff. Firstly, the second paragraph you will not find probably in any textbook in such a cohesive form. The first one part is, of course, I think I have taken from one of the thermo textbooks. So I'm coming to this rider. So what you essentially do, to take the first law into a rate form, and flowing systems are very commonly encountered in chemical engineering problems. So what you do, we sort of divide it by an infinitesimal time delta t. So this is essentially a time average form. of the first law or the rate form. And now what we do is we take limits. Is it clear to all? Of course, we have cancelled that there is no change in potential energy and no change in kinetic energy. Of course, there can be kinetic energy in this particular case. So it's better not to write it in du dt. It's better to write it as dE. Is it clear to all? So this is nothing but you do it everything, the rate form of the first law. And the assumption over here is very similar, right? This is essentially the assumption. Assumption is very similar. No, Samira, please do not worry. I sometimes write, so fluid is flowing essentially. So that is one of the consideration. This equation I have copied from a book, but I am perfectly okay if you write everything with positive, everything with negative, because for an actual system, when you are looking at the problem, the work done, since you are integrating it in between the first state and the, or you know the first state and the second state, it will carry its own sign. Don't worry about it. So I wrote somewhere that many times I prefer to write this as Q plus W, or if you want to be very, very careful, you can write this or whatever. So kindly do not, if you are not happy, just write plus delta W. I will see carefully from which context I have taken it and why a minus is written. So as of now, I don't want to get into that. I'm into something, so let me just finish it. Assumption is very similar to the one we took to define ideal process. 2 minutes break now for the class. Kindly look into this slide, apparently very boring, and then look into this final note I have written. See, the actual expression is nothing. So you know the expression for the first law, and all you are doing is now instead of the total change in energy, it now gets converted to the change in the rate of change of energy is, so it's work per unit time, so it's the rate of heat transfer and essentially the power. That's all that it does. So kindly go through the slide and then please come back to this particular statement what I have made. So everybody has understood what we have done. You have been using this equation for ages now without knowing its thermodynamic consequences and the assumption that are associated with it, right? This all of you agree? Because you have all done n number of problems where you have used the formula like MCP delta T and stuff like that. Over a period of time, how much energy would be required and all these things, you have done it. So the only difference is all of you also know the first law, right? And now we are a little bit more careful about the science part of it. And then we understand when we are writing the first law in its strictest form, we essentially, the initial and final condition have to be at equilibrium. Because until and unless the initial and final conditions are at equilibrium, you cannot define the state, because you cannot write the values of the state variable. And then for a continuous process, what you have done so far for a very long time now is you have taken the rate form of this equation. So what is the rate form? You essentially take a time average or divide both sides of the equation with a small time interval delta t and then take a limit. So you essentially, your change in delta u is essentially becomes, or change in energy becomes dE dt, and that's essentially the rate of heat transfer and rate of work done. This is all what you are doing, right? And then I may have made a statement that the assumption is very similar to the one we took to define, or the one we made to define ideal process. So can I have a quick comment from you all on this particular statement? Have you understood this? This will not fetch you a single marks in any examination, but this will give you the confidence, or this will give you the fundamentals. This will clarify your fundamental. Have you understood this assumption, this particular statement? Yes, no one? Are you clear, confused, angry, happy, what? Samira, your question is a beautiful question. I will answer to it, but not today. I'm not feeling like answering to it. It's not that I do not know. This is something I know very well. Abhilash, which part do you want me to explain again? Moment I get a request, please explain. I need to know which part is not clear. The assumption part? The assumption part we haven't talked about. So other than the assumption part, everybody has understood? Assumption I haven't talked about yet. Other than the assumption part, everybody has understood? I just wanted to check whether anybody has picked up the meaning of what I have written regarding the assumption. Others, why there is such a silence? Yeah, so anybody would like to comment on this statement or the sentence I have written about the assumption? Strange silence. So what was the assumption when we talked about, so Abhilash, you are not alone. Your other friends are, thanks for openly saying that I did not understand what you have meant. Your other friends are just not opening up. That's not the right spirit. When you say that we have understood and say yes sir or whatever, right? So also have the mental strength of saying that sir, I have not understood, or what you are saying. You don't even have to say that I have not understood. You can perfectly nicely say that what you are writing is not making any sense to me, which is perfectly okay. What was the assumption in case of an ideal process? Yes, Rishi, now you are talking sense. I don't know why the silence for such a long time. So what was the assumption? Ideal process, that it was in equilibrium during the whole process. So it cannot be in equilibrium during the whole process, because if it is, so Arjav, if the system remains in actual equilibrium, right, then the process is not possible. So what was the assumption is the deviation from every step was infinitesimal, so that within the limits of that deviation, the properties remain same as equilibrium, or the system never sort of deviates from equilibrium. Yeah, right. So Tanmay, absolutely. Also, here is a very similar assumption like that, and that is the reason I have encircled this particular thing. So those of you who are giving absolutely correct answer like Tanmay, Arjav, Rishi about the ideal process, can you pick up the assumption here? Well, I will say, if I don't really want to waste so much time, because question, thinking about the answer, writing it down in a chat box, which is very boring, and then again network issues, so it might lead to actually a 5-minute delay. The answer is there. When we defined an ideal process, our assumption was that the change is so infinitesimal that the system remains in equilibrium, right? This everybody understands. Here the assumption is the change in time is so small that the system remains in equilibrium. Has everybody got it now? Abhilash, is it clear? That's the assumption I tried to highlight. So there the deviation in the state variable was infinitesimal. Here the time over which you are doing the averaging is infinitesimal. That is the utility. In fact, that is the reason this equation is valid, or sort of does not, or sort of satisfies the thermodynamic stringency of equilibrium only when you take the delta T tending to 0, right? Of course, then you can calculate the equation or calculate the energy requirement and stuff like that over a long period of time. Doesn't matter, because the equation you are writing for a rate form, right? You have got this by dividing the original energy balance equation by a very small amount of time. Is it clear to all? Right. So I have 10 minutes, but I am not. So this is the next chapter that we have to start. Estimation of physical properties. This has a bit of philosophy. I'm not going to start it now. I'll just leave it in 2-3 minutes time. So the problem that we talked about was a very easy one, because water was flowing in, or something was flowing in, entering at T1 and leaving at T2. So you were told to calculate what is the heat required, and you could do that, right? So you could do that, or you could use this because of two things. Now you understand that you are comfortable in understanding or getting the rate form of the first law. Reality is other way around. You have been using this equation for a long time. Today you understand how this equation slightly drifts from the first law, and it's essentially the rate form of the first law. But more importantly, there are two sets of parameters that you know for performing the calculation. One set of parameters is this, and the other set of parameter is this. Everybody gets why I have clubbed these two together and the CP separately? Everybody has got this. You essentially need to know all these three entities, nothing else. It is so simple. Chemical process calculation. So my part, the calculation is going to be this simple. And that's why I have not yet given any assignment. This that I will give, don't worry. Don't feel very sad that I am not giving assignments and what will happen. In a regular classroom, I never give assignments, but unfortunately this time I have to give. I only sort of look into the midsem and endsem marks, but this time we will do something. But I think I need to teach a little bit more, and then we are in a good position to give some reasonable assignments. More importantly, when I say that we need, so everybody is understanding this, that in order to calculate, we just need to know the value of these three entities, and then you can calculate. But then I, with my usual habit of complicating things, I say, well, I am going to divide these three into two different brackets. Why these two different brackets? Is it clear to all? Or is it clear to anyone? Or can anyone explain why suddenly I do a lot of crazy things, but why I suddenly decide to club these two together and leave CP separately? Yes, anyone? Oh, measurable using instrument. I mean, that's a very sort of a high level answer. There is a even simpler answer, Shraman. Very good. Not unique, Adrija. First and second, the m dot and delta T are your process requirements. And the third one is a material property. It's not unique. Kindly change the word unique that you have used. Maybe CP is constant, that allows you to use it as CP delta T. Wait a second, CP is constant, it's not a variable. CP can also be a variable. You can very well have CP in this form. And in that case, you cannot use Cp delta T. So you all know how it will go. Right? It will go like this. Difference is as follows. What mass flow rate you are going to flow is your choice. What final temperature you want to use is your choice. So I will sort of take Odrija's answer to be the closest one, that mass flow rate and temperature difference are process dependent, so they can change at any point of time. But then you, of course, you also need to understand that you can choose a different liquid. It's not that this calculation can only be done for water. Maybe I should change it. It should be liquid, right? And if you take a liquid, then this becomes a physical property. This is a physical parameter. These are process parameters. Is it clear to all? And then the second thing you need to understand, this is a very simple problem. Liquid heated remains liquid. What can be the most generic problem? So let me quickly check 2-3 things. So everybody understands now the difference between a physical parameter and a process parameter, right? So Yash and many others who have written Cp is constant, that is not the important thing. Cp is a depends, Abhilash. It depends entirely. The mass will change or not depends on the process. I mean, you can have an unsteady state also, you can calculate. That's not a big problem. As of now, you are assuming mass is constant. Mass flow rate is constant. But you can have a variable mass flow rate that can be handled. That's not the most important question. Mass flow rate and temperature difference, these are process parameters. Everybody understands that? You are choosing it. You want to heat today, you want to heat as an engineer 15 meter cube per hour flow rate. Tomorrow the flow rate, let's say, is 18 meter cube per hour or 20 kg per hour, and day after tomorrow the flow rate is 25 kg per hour. Is it clear? So that's a process parameter. Today your room temperature is 25 degrees centigrade and you want your outlet at 45 degrees centigrade, so delta T is 20 degrees. Tomorrow your room temperature is 31 and you want the outlet at 45 again, so your delta T is 14 degrees. That's also a process parameter. But the moment you are using liquid, a particular liquid, let's say it's water, your Cp is fixed. I am not saying if you choose a specific liquid, Cp has to be constant. Cp can still be a function of temperature and other properties, right? But that for a particular liquid, it can be water or whatever, you have a specific value or functionality or whatever of Cp. So that is what is a physical parameter. This is clear to all now? And then what I say is that the example I gave here is actually a very simple example, because a liquid is entering and a liquid is leaving. It has only got heated up. But all processes may not be so simple. How it's a physical parameter? Because the, yes, Vivek, good question. Because even if it is dependent on Cp, is dependent on temperature, like this, A, B, and C are constants, which depends only on that material. And not on T. That's why it's a physical parameter, right? So essentially the way the Cp contributes, you are right. The way Cp contributes in your calculation, it is dependent on the physical, it's dependent on the process parameter. But Cp, the functionality is independent of the process parameter. Is it clear? Vivek? No? What is your doubt? So your calculation is okay. I will take time because this is a good question. Let's say M is constant, Cp delta T. Now you have chosen a liquid one. You have to go to a table. You find that Cp has a functionality like this. And for liquid one, A, B, and C are constants. You get it from some table. If you take, instead of liquid 1, you take a liquid 2, what will be different? Even before your process parameter and the delta T is different, what will be different? Instead of liquid 1, if you take a second liquid, what will be different? Instead of a first liquid, if you take a second liquid, what is going to be different? I guess it's network issue now. No answers coming. ABC will be different. Don't say CP will be different. ABC values will be different. No, don't say CP. Those of you who are writing CP, you are not going into the details. Bhavna, your answer is correct. Sneh Bandhu, your answer is correct. Where is Vivek? Where has Vivek disappeared? Arjav, your answer is correct. If he, instead of a first liquid, where is Vivek now? He asked the question and now he has vanished. If instead of a liquid 1, you have taken a second liquid, your ABC is going to be different. That's how. These ABCs are dependent on the physical property of the liquid you are choosing. Therefore, CP is material dependent. Unlike the other parameters which are entirely process dependent. Now, what is going to happen if CP is a function of T? The effective value of CP that will contribute in the calculation, that also becomes dependent on the delta T, because you have to do the integration. But that is nothing but sort of multiplying. When you are multiplying the whole equation with delta T, what is going to be the different? So if instead CP is constant, you have CP is equal to A plus BT plus CT square, and then you perform an integral. What you are going to do? You are going to have an expression which will say A into delta T plus B by 2 into T2 square minus T1 square plus C by 3 into T2 cube minus T1 cube. So instead of a delta T as a multiplier, right? Yeah, Arjav. But CP should be process dependent. No, CP is not process dependent. The calculation, see, what you are doing here, all of you are confusing. It's a good confusion actually. See, what you are doing here is you have MCP into delta T, right? This is how this delta T is coming in the process parameter. And instead of that, if CP is not constant, your final expression will be something like A into delta T plus B by 2 into T2 square minus T1 square plus C by 3 into T2 cube minus T1 cube. This is how it's going to happen. So instead of CP, your ABC, which are constituents of CP, these represents the physical nature. And these are anyway the process parameters. Instead of a simple delta T, when I wrote a delta T, all of you were very happy. This is a process parameter. So this CP now, the physical property part of the CP now gets broken into this A, B, and C, which are still physical parameters. They do not depend on T. Is it clear? No, it's not going to be a function of delta T. No. Here is CP a function of delta T? The answer is no. Here what we are saying, that the physical part of the CP, the physical property or the constant value of CP is now contributed by A, B, and C. These A, B, and C are constants. You see here, they are constants. A, B, and C are constants, and they do not contribute. They do not vary as a function of T. No, Abhilash, it's not process dependent. Try to follow what I am writing. CP dt is not process dependent, because then your Q, what you are writing over here, even here, this is always process dependent. So there is no Yeah, Samira, in a way, resistivity, but you have a cubic term also here. So the final number is always process dependent. How can you say Q is not process dependent? Q is of course process dependent. But when I segregated Cp to be a material dependent property, in here, what I am writing or what we see is, though Cp is now function of temperature, but these A, B, and C, which are material dependent properties, bring in the physical parameter or associated with the physical property of the system. This is what I meant to say. Is it clear? If it is not clear, I will pick up the discussion from here because I am running out of time. Quick comments. Is it clear? Convinced or not convinced? I don't mind. If you are not convinced, we will spend 10 minutes on this on Saturday. I'll have to stop now. Thank you. And your comments. Are you clear? Samira, yes. I mean, the term is, it can be considered some sort of a resistivity. It's sort of a, constituent property. Cp is not constant. Cp is a function of T. But the constituents of Cp still contains A, B, and C, which are independent of temperature. They are dependent on the physical property. So as somebody said, I think Bhavna only said, that if instead of liquid 1, we take a liquid 2, what is going to happen? ABC for liquid 1 and ABC for liquid 2 are going to be different, right? Therefore, even if you integrate them between the same temperatures, the total heat is going to be different, right? Mass flow rate is same, delta T is same, therefore delta T will be same, T2 square minus T1 square will be same, T2 cube minus T1 cube will be same, but still the Q will be different. Why Q will be different? Because ABC in the two cases are different. And ABC constitute actually are sort of bringing in the effect of the difference in physical parameter to your system. I have to stop now. We're running out of time. Thank you very much.